It's a kind of evil, honestly. What they did, I think it's the most sick, disgusting, cynical political stunt I think I've ever seen. Hi everyone, welcome to the Steve Hilton Show. We are on the road in California. There's the campaign truck right behind me if you're watching this in video. We are in Pasadena. And today, this morning, we just went to a gas station to make an incredibly important point, a warning of a looming gas crisis here in California, with Gavin Newsom and the Democrats finally realizing, I think, because they're all getting very anxious about it, that their policies over the years to crush our oil and gas industry in California, to put these ridiculous extreme regulations, the most extreme in the country, on our refineries, are now really going to cause a crisis. Within weeks, we're being told by industry insiders, you could have gas prices in California spiking. Some people are saying over $8 a gallon, and that we could have within 3 weeks shortages of gas here in California, and also lines at gas stations like we saw in the 1970s. So it's completely insane what's going on. We made a video about that earlier, so you can check that out on my X account and everywhere else on social media where we're active. And here today on the Steve Hilton Show, we got some really, really important conversations. Alex Villaneuva, remember him? He was sheriff of LA County, and he made a really big announcement this week that he is leaving the Democratic Party, joining the Republican Party. He's here to tell us why. Janice Hahn is with us with all the latest news on what the madness that's going on in California. And David Tangipa is here because, as you'll see if you've been following me on social media, we had an absolutely extraordinary example of the Democrats' extremism go down in Sacramento over the last week or so, which is this insanity over a bill that was going to make it a felony to purchase children, 16 and 17-year-olds, for sex. And the Democrats in the state legislature blocked it. And David Tangipa, good friend of mine, newly elected member of the Assembly, he made an incredibly moving speech on the floor of the Assembly about his personal connection to this story and what the Democrats have done. And he's here to tell us all about that. And it's been another fantastic week on the campaign trail. I'm so loving running for governor and getting around the state. We've been all over the place this week. We were in Los Angeles on Monday, had a fantastic conversation with some business owners and parents in East LA, very, very much the Latino heart of Los Angeles. Fantastic conversation. There's way more of it than we've been able to share so far, but it really tells you what I keep saying, which is we've got a lot of opportunity in California, partly because the way in which working class people, Latinos in particular, now the largest group in California, have been so hammered by these Democrat policies. They are looking for change. And I really saw that when you spent, a couple of hours in this place in East LA. It was a really, really great conversation. We went up the coast to Santa Barbara. That was amazing. We had a brilliant event out in out on an avocado ranch in the open air. That was wonderful, a policy forum. We went to Bakersfield to see people working in our oil and gas industry, which was just mentioned has been completely destroyed, basically, by these extremist policies from the Democrats. We stopped at a strawberry farm in Ventura County in the morning to hear about how our agriculture industry, the farmers, are being crushed by ridiculous regulations and also lawsuits. We learned a really, really unbelievable amount of detail about the PAGA lawsuits, the Private Attorney General Act, which is destroying so many businesses in California. Some new details on that, which we'll be sharing. So it's just been an incredibly busy time. We're here in Los Angeles today, where I'm taping this on a Thursday, heading up to the Central Valley tomorrow, to Visalia and to Fresno. So it's just really exhilarating for me to see the response that we're getting on this campaign. Each one of our events now, they're arranged at very short notice. We're putting this together as we go along. We're getting hundreds of people coming out to get involved in the campaign. The energy is incredible. The enthusiasm is incredible. And I really believe what I say the whole time, which is it's not going to be easy to turn things around in California, but this is our best shot for at least 20 years. Everyone knows it's time for change. Everyone can see California isn't working. Everyone understands that we can't go on like this. The question is, can we put together the kind of grassroots movement that will mobilize millions of people across the state to actually go out and vote for the change that we need? That's the purpose of the campaign. That's why I'm on the road the whole time, really enjoying it. And so far, It is going really well. Right, let's meet our first guest today, Alex Villaneuva. Alex, fantastic to see you on this very, very big week. So last weekend, you made the announcement that so many people have been hoping for, honestly. I've been hearing it from so many people that you were leaving the Democratic Party, becoming a Republican. Tell us the story.
Well, you know what? I just Googled last weekend's result on YouTube just out of curiosity. Guess what came up? A clip from 5 years ago where Mark Gonzalez, the former chair of the LA County Democratic Party, announcing that the Democratic Party is leaving me when I was in office. You can't make that up. I mean, that was right on point right there. But you know what? It's just that, just like Reagan said, I didn't leave the party left me, and they actually said it. So we just made it formal and official this weekend, and we switched over and come to the party of common sense and sanity. And I've held my punches on the Democratic Party forever, and I have a treasure trove of information that I want people to really understand and really appreciate the depravity of the Democratic Party in California.
So let's start with that. Basically, there's two parts to the story, Alex. I'd love to sort of take them in turn. One, I guess what pushed you out of the Democratic Party, and then two, why you feel comfortable now in today's Republican Party. But let's start with what pushed you out and some of those reasons.
Well, I'll tell you this, my entire life, I've never put politics into my decision making. I just figure out what's the right thing to do and get it done. I call the
Yeah.
balls and strikes. I don't say if it's left or right. So some policies I had, Democratic Party agreed with. Most of them they disagreed with because they involved law and order, holding public officials accountable for corruption. Then they wanted nothing to do with any of that. How dare I? Then they started calling for my resignation. They initiated lawfare. Everything that Trump went through at the national level, I went through here, courtesy of the Board of Supervisors. And so they really told me that I had no place in the Democratic Party. You know what? The feeling is mutual because they do not represent what California is. They do not represent the hardworking men and women in law enforcement, in the trenches throughout the entire state of California. What people really need, the middle class, no, they're all about grievances, identity, politics, victimology, criminal appreciation day. Watch me. There'll be a Democrat in the assembly that's going to push that ballot measure.
It's amazing, isn't it? And it's interesting that you're making this move now because there's been some commentary, particularly since the last election and Kamala Harris's defeat, that the Democrats kind of, some of them at least, may be realizing they've gone too far left and things may be changing. But it sounds like either it's not at all or certainly not fast enough to keep you in the party.
No, they double down on stupid. You would think, and you're right, after the November shellacking that they took at the hands of Trump, they'd come back and figure out, you know what, maybe what we're doing, it doesn't represent the interests of the nation. No, they decided that we didn't go far enough to the left. I'm going to give you a quick summary. Just last week in Sacramento, Senate Bill 634 from Sasha Perez, the right to rest. So basically, the homeless, the transients have the right to basically sleep and poop on your kid's sidewalk in front of their school. So in other words, you can't enforce anti-vagrancy laws, even though the Supreme Court in the Grants Pass thing undid the Boise decision that was horrible from the Ninth Circuit. She's trying to do an end run around the Supreme Court. She just got into office in Sacramento. That's just one. Look at this other one. SB 560 from Lola Smallwood Cuevas. This is the one where they want to legalize welfare fraud. I mean, wrap your mind around that one. It keeps getting worse. AB 379. They wanted to block sex trafficking of 16 to 17-year-olds from being a felony, and they wanted to downgrade to a misdemeanor. Where on earth do they come up with this crap? And then the other one, SB 132, last year, this law already, the Transgender Respect Agency and Dignity Act, which allows convicted rapists, males, to go to a female prison. Gee, what do they want to do there? You can't make this stuff up.
It's unbelievable. And actually, the thing that's really interesting when you list those, and fantastic that you've got the details, because I always love the details, is like, it just reminds us how much crap is being churned out by Sacramento. All these bills, it's hard to even keep track of them. I mean, can I just double click, as they say, on one of them? Because it's one I hadn't heard of, actually, which is the legalizing welfare fraud. What is that about?
This bright senator decided that, hey, it's, you know what, these are poor people, and if they're engaged in welfare and somehow they did a mistake on their paperwork, we shouldn't penalize them if the mistake is less than $25,000. But district attorneys already know how to do that, and they can separate a lawful intent to defraud versus an honest mistake. But they want to take that, basically that discretion away from all of the district attorneys throughout the entire state and say, no, you get a free pass, you steal 25,000 or less. Imagine that.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's like sort of a version of Prop 47. It was legalizing theft up to $950 a day. I mean, these people, yes, we can cut crime by making it legal, basically. It's just unbelievable. I know you don't have too much time, Alex, today, so I want to make sure we cover the second part of the story, which is your comfort in joining today's Republican Party, which I guess is very different to perhaps the Republican Party from years ago. Tell us why you made the move all the way, not just leaving the Democrats, but joining the Republicans.
Well, one thing I did, even as a Democrat, and I got to give props to all the Republicans out there, even as a Democrat in office, even though the sheriff's office is a nonpartisan office, as a Democrat, I was invited to Republican events, to Republican conferences, to town halls, and I was received with standing ovations and warm regard, even though they knew I was from the other party. And that, I got to give props to all the Republicans out there for that, because that means they're casting a large tent. They're willing to entertain. Okay, we may not agree on everything, but on the big picture, we all get it, and we're going to try to make it happen. On the Democratic side, they're making their tent as small as possible. And because I was a centrist, they told me basically in no uncertain terms, you're unwelcome here because you're not a radical leftist. And I said, to hell with that, because that law and order, it's right or wrong. It's not left or right. So it was very easy to then just fully embrace the Republican Party.
Yeah, and you say common sense, and I think that is the defining phrase, certainly in the Trump era. I mean, he uses that term all the time. So do I, in terms of what we need to do here in California. It's practical things. It's not ideological. It's like, how do we actually solve problems? Cut crime, make the streets safer, get costs down for housing and gas and electricity, all these things, just practical things. Do you feel in particular, where you are in LA, it's such a big county, such an important part of the state. And of course, Latinos are such a big constituency that across the country, you've seen a big shift towards the Republicans. Putting that together, how do you see the future in terms of the politics of LA County?
I think in LA County, which has almost 50% of LA County is Latino, they're starting to realize, wait a minute, Democratic Party does not represent my values, because Latinos, by and large, are very pro-family. They believe in the nuclear family. They have a strong foundation of faith, and they bring that with them from whatever country they immigrated from or their generations past came from. Faith is an important part, and they believe in pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, and that's the whole idea of economic freedom. And you look at small businesses and creation. Who are the driving force behind small business creation in California? It's Latinos, and very, very important. And then you go and listen to what the Democrats are saying in California. They made a huge mess out of the entire state, and everything is, oh, but Trump is bad. Trump is bad. No, no, no. Tell me how you're going to fix the mess you created here in California. They have nothing to say about that. It's all about, oh, look at the big bad orange man over there. No, no, no. It's what you're doing over here. That's what we got to focus. And I think that the Republican Party, Latinos joining the Republican Party, you're going to see a lot more of it. And people starting to realize, yeah, that's the future right there.
Very cool. So last question, Alex. Does this mean we can hope to see you on the ballot somewhere running for office in the future? I know a lot of people would love to see that.
Perhaps. I got a trial. I'm going up against the county in June. Let's see what happens with the trial, and then my wife and I will decide from that point forward. But I can't forget my book. It's published. It's available on Amazon. It's called Sheriff Holding the Thin Blue Line in a Deep Blue State. It's got my life story, and in summary, David meets Goliath, and Goliath discovers lawfare. That's the book right there in one sentence. And you're going to really be fascinated by how this whole thing unfolded
Yeah.
and how corrupt the Democratic Party truly is.
So listen, I'll leave you there for now. I know you've got to run, but here's a great idea. We've got another podcast called Big Ideas Book Club, and it's all about people who've written really interesting books. We got a long conversation there. Why don't we do that? Join me on that podcast, and we can talk all about the book and get really into the details. I think people will be absolutely fascinated.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
Fantastic. Great to see you. Welcome, Alex. And we'll see you very soon.
Good deal. You too, Steve, and watch out for the rattlesnakes.
Okay. See you soon. All right. Joining us now, Jen Hahn, our friend, AM 870, The Morning Answer, and of course, the host of our fantastic Unite IE conference, where I was so happy to see you in person last Saturday. What a great event. Great to see you, Jen.
It is so good to see you, Steve. And it was so great to see you that Saturday. We had 800 people at that event, and it was incredible. It shows you that there is a conservative movement, even in
Yes.
California. And I know you're ready. You're not ready to write us off. I'm not ready to write us off. We're here to fight. And there are a lot of fighters still in California. We're not done yet.
Oh, 100%. And I'm seeing it everywhere I go. I talked about it a little bit earlier. I mean, basically, all these events we're doing on the road, hundreds of people coming out at very short notice. It's really, really, there's an energy there. It's fantastic. All right. What have you got
I
for us
love it.
today?
Well, on that note, actually, a couple of things. First, we can talk about the LA County new homeless scandal, which is a big one. Karen Bass was at a conference this week making some very shocking claims, and it just shows we've got a leadership problem. But let's start off with the survey about Gavin Newsom. Did you see this? 40% of California thinks that Gavin Newsom isn't buying what he's trying to sell as the moderate, right? Because he's running for president. And more than half of those surveyed in a different survey from Berkeley said that Gavin Newsom is simply not interested in California anymore and that he shifted his focus to national politics. And Steve, I thought it was appropriate to bring that up with you because in your run for governor, you are fighting for California. And I think we are desperate for leadership right now in California that isn't looking at our state as a stepping stone, that maybe the end goal is governor and that you can do great things and that you can fix our state. We know Gavin Newsom drove it into the ground. So of course he wants to hop on to the next opportunity. But I just think it's so sad that we have all of these elected officials that are just constantly looking over our shoulder and don't want to provide for us. And people are onto it now, even in California, as we say, where there's a lot of Democrats and no party preference voters who might have fallen victim to that in the past. I think everybody wants to see someone who is ultimately going to try to help California.
It's so interesting you say that because I basically heard that exact point about me because I'm a naturalized citizen. So I got my citizenship in 2021 and was born in the UK. Obviously, I can't run for president, even if I wanted to, or even if there's the remotest chance of that being something realistic. So this is it for me in terms of my ambition. And there's nothing that I would want to do more. The greatest honor, imagine leading this incredible state. And a number of people have said to me, just in the last week or so, you should really say that. I haven't said, I mean, people ask me about it. We talk about it. I've never made a kind of proactive point about it, but it sounds like you think I should as well.
I think you should. And, I think another great example as we're all sitting here waiting, I'm not going to say with bated breath because Kamala Harris, but we're all sitting around waiting to see what she's going to do. She's back out in the spotlight. We're wondering, is she jumping in for president? Is she jumping in for governor? And it's a strategy for her. No matter what she picks, she's going to find the path of least resistance, which very well may be California. But that's not because she wants to help the state. That's not because she wants to do something and change the way things have been going. She's looking at it as a political career move. I mean, get a job in the public sector. You don't have to, in the private sector. You don't have to keep running for office. But these politicians that have run us literally for the last 20 years hop around like it's just another stepping stone for them. And it's really sad. And I do think people are awake to that. And I think both of those polls prove it. One from the LA Times, one from Berkeley this week.
It is interesting. And I think that, I said it in Huntington Beach because we were at the beach. And so it just popped into my head, the tide is turning. But as a metaphor, I do really sense that. I really, really do. Of course, in a way, I have to believe that. There's no point doing this if you don't think you can actually win. But I don't think it's just talking it up. I think that there is something going on and we've got to really capitalize on it.
Well, and we have to have people, and this is true no matter your politics, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, somewhere in between. I only want to give my energy, my time, and my attention to people who actually want to fix problems. I'm tired of hearing people
Yes.
talk about problems. I'm tired of hearing people complain. I want people who are serious about trying to get in here and fix our state. I
Yes.
live in Los Angeles, fix our city. And that was the other story that I brought to you today, Steve, is the
Yeah.
story about Mayor Karen Bass, who I'm kind of confused that no one has jumped into the mayor's race. I'm surprised that we haven't heard more from Rick Caruso. He seems to be busy yucking it up with her until this week when he's now critical of fire response. I'm critical of Rick Caruso now because I think he needs to be serious of Los Angeles. I think he can help us. I think he should help us. Somebody needs to get into this race against Karen Bass. She's not the leader that we deserve. She's not the leader we pay for. And this week she was talking to Alex Michelson at the Milken Institute, and he asked her about the LADWP head who's making $750,000 a year and had an empty reservoir on her watch, which, by the way, that reservoir in Pacific Palisades is still empty. And, you know, we talk about environmentalists, Steve. They won't let us take a shower, and we're not supposed to flush every time we go to the bathroom, but they'll dump hundreds of millions of gallons of fresh water because their cover is broken on their reservoir. I mean, it's ridiculous. It would be laughable if it weren't so serious. But Alex asked her, are you going to fire somebody? Is someone going to be fired?
Are you satisfied with the performance of the LADWP? There's been a lot of questions about Janice Quinones, who's making over $700,000 a year. Do you think that she did a good job, and should she continue in that job?
Well, I certainly would not sit here and say she shouldn't continue in her job. But the issue with the DWP actually is the DWP and the fire department as well.
She's making $750,000 a year. Look, I'm happy for people who make a lot of money, but now we have to pay $700,000 because she's done such a bad job. People want to kill her, and we have to pay for security.
But it's really, I mean, funny enough, I make that point all the time. I'm on the road. You know, this week I did events in Bakersfield, Santa Barbara, East LA. I make this point all the time because one of the main things you hear from people is the financial struggle. It's so tough to live and exist in California, to raise your family, to run your bit. Everything is so difficult and expensive, and the government just makes it worse. And a big part of that is the taxes that we pay at every level, you know, and it's the state taxes and sales tax and whatever. In LA, I mean, I was with Benny Johnson down on Skid Row at the end of last week, making the point that just in Los Angeles, you've had 4 separate tax increases in the last 10 years, specifically for homelessness. And the problem just keeps getting worse. And so everyone looks at all these taxes right across the board: gas tax, sales tax, property tax, state income tax, you name it, and say, well, wait a minute, everything's worse. Where is the money going, right?
Yep.
And the answer is things like that, because they've doubled the state budget in the last 10 years. It's gone up from about 160 billion to 320 billion. Even after inflation, it's up by 50%. And everything is worse. So where's it going? It's in these inflated salaries for all these government bureaucrats and political appointees, all these people just making a fortune. And then on top of the salaries, like the 750,000 for the empty reservoir lady, you've got the pensions and the luxury healthcare that they all get way, way more in terms of health benefits than regular people, all paid for by us. And it used to be said that you take a job in the government, it's kind of public service, you don't get paid as much as you might in the private sector. That's why you have generous pensions and healthcare. Now you get generous everything, and the public just feel ripped off.
Yeah, especially when we don't get even a little bit of leadership. I mean, I want to put up a ticker, and maybe we should do this with your campaign. Put up a ticker that shows how many permits have been issued in Los Angeles, because the answer was 4. Now it's 31, and they're somehow celebrating a big victory. This is not a victory. This is insulting.
It's insulting, and I mean, it's months now, months. And she said to President Trump's face, Karen Bass, you know, yeah, we're going to get on it, Mr. President. You know, just unbelievable. And I want to repeat, I mean, in case people didn't see it last time, because it so captures their mentality, I'm going to repeat this point that I make often, which is that really kind of crystallize why this is all going wrong and why nothing happens. It's because of their mindset, these people that we have in office, right? She put out this post, and it's now about 3 weeks ago, probably, saying, I have just signed an executive order streamlining permitting to rebuild LA. Okay, fine, you know, 4 months late, but whatever. That's okay, good. But then when you actually watch what she says she put a clip of the press conference, So the Post says, I just signed an order streamlining, right, as if something happened in the real world. What she actually said was, I just signed an executive order tasking agency heads with developing paths forward to streamlining. And she's like, what?
Yeah.
Nothing's happened. It's just bureaucratic BS, just process. Because that's what all these people know. They're just political, machine politicians who all they know is how to navigate the political machine. They don't understand how to get anything done.
They don't respect taxpayer dollars. The other story that
Exactly
I
right.
have for you this week, it's really along the same vein. I mean, it's funny how these stories all link together, and it's all about a lack of leadership. And that is with LAHSA, with the Authority for Homelessness in Los Angeles. You probably saw this. LAist has a story of two whistleblowers now who have come out and said that the head of this group that, again, wanted to misuse taxpayer money and do all these things was deleting emails. That's the allegation anyway, which is what Karen Bass was accused of doing to protect themselves. This woman was trying to protect Karen Bass as well because her Inside Safe program was garbage, and so she wanted to protect her from the news media reports on that. And this is my personal favorite, because you and I will have a glass of wine or maybe a martini every once in a while. She wanted to
Exactly.
use taxpayer money for an open bar at a holiday party. And when she was told that
Oh,
that
for
could be a
goodness.
liability and that would look bad, she said, well, maybe we should just get a vendor to do it. And they said, well, that'll be a conflict of interest. These people are just insane. They don't respect how hard it is to live in LA, how much it costs for us to do this, and going up by the day. And again, it all goes back to just better leadership so that they start to appoint people that do a better job at every turn, whether it's homelessness or it's the fire rebuilding effort. We deserve more.
You are exactly right. That is the fundamental point. California isn't working. Everyone can see that. And the reason it's not working is the people in charge don't know how to make anything work. Got no experience doing real jobs. They're just bureaucrats, politicians. It's all the same at every level. Gavin Newsom at the state level, at the city level, the county level. And it's just a terrible, terrible disaster unfolding because we're now the worst on so many of these things out of all the states in America. But the good news is, because it was people who did this, this is not man-made, this is not natural disasters, it's a man-made disaster, it means we can change it. And that's why I'm running
Yep.
for governor.
And that's exactly right. And that's why people are going to they're going to flock to people that actually offer solutions, because all we hear
Exactly.
about is the complaining about the problems. And then we keep electing the same leaders who have no experience in how to fix them. And that's got to change.
It will. I'm working on it. All right, Jen, great to be with you.
Get
Thanks
to
a lot.
work.
See you soon. Exactly.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, David. So much to talk to you about. I haven't actually talked to you since the start of my campaign, and hopefully we'll have some longer time at some point to catch up on all of that. You've been on the campaign trail. I'd love to get your advice. And you won, so you're a great model. But I really want to talk to you about something very, very serious, which is this absolutely appalling story that's been going on now for a week or so in the legislature. But it goes back much further, because now for years we've seen Democrats in the state legislature take a position on this issue where any normal person would say this is a total no-brainer, which is making it a felony, making sure we have appropriate punishment for people who traffic children for sex, who purchase children for sex. In this case, this week, 16 and 17-year-olds. But this saga's been going on for years now. Shannon Grove has been a frequent guest on this show talking about it, but it did come to a head again in the last week, and you particularly were so strong on this, and you made a speech on the floor of the assembly that brought tears to my eyes. And I just want you to talk about your connection to this issue and your take on where we are right now.
Well, when I really look at what's happening here in Sacramento, not only California, it tells me that there's just this broader scheme of a criminal first agenda held by the ruling party and the majority leaders in this state. And that's evident by what they do. Actions speak louder than words. And the fact that they would fight and debate something so simple as making it to where soliciting a minor for sex is something that's debatable is what people need to realize and look at. That we needed to create so much public pressure to force them into this type of negotiation is something that should break everybody's heart, because that's not what they expect here in Sacramento and coming out of the Capitol. And it is something that is very personal to me, because I actually ran for office because of some of the issues that happened with SB 14 back in 2023, I believe. And that bill, all it did was make child trafficking a strikeable felony in the state of California, making it on the same level as arson, robbery, and burglary. And that time, the California Public Safety Committee in the Assembly killed that bill. And I couldn't believe that our elected leaders thought that it wasn't elevated enough or even important enough to get into that same strikeable offense. And so I ran for office, and I was proud to see that a Democrat author actually brought it to the floor, because she's a hero who actually has gone after these sex traffickers. But they removed her from that bill because she wouldn't fall in line. They attacked her for not wanting to create these. And she even stated that, hey, these amendments I don't want to take, but is this what you're going to do? Will you just kill my bill if I don't take these amendments? And essentially, that's what they told her, that we now had to come in and really just, again, provide some Air Force and just get public support. So it was the public that really pushed this notion to get people back on track and just simply say every single minor, 16 and 17, should have the same protections that 15 and 14-year-olds have, and that we should do everything that we need to protect those individuals because they're the ones who need it most.
So I just want to lay out the context for those people who are, and many people watching outside of California or listening to this show, saying, what on earth is even going on in California that this is even an issue where we need to have new legislation to make this a felony? And of course, it all goes back to Prop 57, which is Kamala Harris, when she was state attorney general, pushed this proposition, totally falsely described it on the ballot, and sold it to voters as something that was innocent and so on. But it's in that proposition, a whole bunch of crimes were downgraded so they wouldn't get automatic jail time, because it's part of this far left extremist agenda of what they call criminal justice reform and decarceration. Nobody should be in jail, or on and on, this far left agenda. So that's why a whole bunch of crimes were downgraded. I mean, including domestic violence. I mean, the list is shocking when you see. And Shannon Grove and others have particularly focused on the ones that you would think would have a total consensus, reinstating tough penalties for those involving sex with children. And even that's been such kind of torture to try and get that across the line. But tell us I'd love to hear you just talk a little bit about your personal experience in relation to all this.
Yeah, so I grew up in one of the most trafficked areas in the state of California, actually within 10 miles of the capital, that I remember stories growing up that there were, whether it was politicians coming out of the state capitol or even local politicians, that would go to a street called Watt Avenue and then purchase people. Growing up in high school, I knew people who were actively trafficked, whether it was on social media or it was right there on the street. And I worked at a McDonald's off of Watt Avenue and Roseville Road. And there was a day that will never leave me. And there was somebody that used to come in all the time. She would ask for the 3 cookies for $1, and all she wanted was these cookies to be hot. And then she would start walking on the street right after that. There was one day where she came in, she waited for the cookies. I could still see it in my head every single day. As she sat on really the corner near the exit, somebody pulled up in a blue Sunbird Silverado, an early 90s one, walks in, talks to her. Her order is almost ready. We've got about a minute left. And she gets up, she walks out, and she leaves, and then never saw her again. And these are people that I went to high school with. These are people that I've grown up with. And not only that, it's personal and has happened in my family as well. And so for this to be debatable, and for this legislature to say that we're defending and we're protecting those communities, well, I grew up in it. And again, words mean nothing if you're not going to take the necessary actions to protect those individuals. And it is insane that the elected leadership thought it was somewhat negotiable. This isn't over yet, even though they've added some of the amendments to make sure that we can go after the demand side and the buyers who want to solicit, and not only that, target 16 and 17-year-olds because of this fetish and fantasy that they have. It's going to go to the Senate side. And we do know and have heard that the Senate leadership in the Senate, they don't want to hear this. They don't want this bill. And that should offend everybody. Even the governor is against what a lot of he's heard in the legislature. The governor, nobody would have thought Gavin Newsom and us actually agree on one issue on this, but he's the one who's actually pushing in. So there's this fraction that's happening right now. And at least on this part, we're trying to force it because this is just a bare necessity and basics.
Yes.
This place is out of touch, especially when it comes to those parameters on Prop 36. voted on in every single county, and yet we still haven't allocated the resources to make sure that we're protecting Californians.
I mean, it's just such a strong example of I think the tendency that we've seen, which really explains a lot of the utter destruction and dysfunction and failures in this 15 years of one party rule, is this triumph of ideology, right? It's always about the ideology instead of practicality and what happens in the real world to real people. And so I think that's what's driving all of this. You know, how any normal person could be against this is just impossible to understand. But when you have an ideology about, I don't know, what kind of identity politics nonsense is driving this, is just ridiculous. But there's another part of it that in a way was, I mean, this part of it is familiar. The first part, which was Democrats blocking this kind of legislation, that's been going on now for years, right? Year after year, there's a bill that they vote against, and it's the same pattern. You know, I think we saw it before. Newsom weighed in because he was embarrassed by it, and it was damaging to the reputation of his party. And so he weighs in, and they reverse themselves. But they keep doing it, so it tells you where they really are. It tells you what they really think, that they keep doing it. They haven't changed their minds. They're just embarrassed about the public blowback. But the thing that happened this time that I hadn't seen before, which was so shocking to me, even after, like, I don't know, like if you add it all up in various places, you know, 35 years or so of working one way or another in politics, government, in business, and all these things, I've seen a lot. But what they then did was beyond belief. They ran ads against you and friends of mine like Josh Hoover and others, accusing you of doing what they did. Just explain what went on there.
That was the part that actually shocked a lot of us, that they were testing these ads saying that we were the ones voting against the protections for children. But even if you go back to it, that actually is wildly inaccurate. What we voted against was this forced amendment, which only said that we intend to protect 16 and 17-year-olds. And all we voted against was that wasn't good enough to intend to do something when we're the legislative body here in the state of California, and there's nobody else who can actually take action but us. And that's the part that we voted against. And
Yes.
for them to weaponize and not only that, use this, we were fighting for a Democrat bill and they stripped the author. That's how toxic that relationship is, that they've created this circular firing squad that they can't even agree when it comes to protecting children. And that's the issue that we have here in California. And people really have to see and recognize, you know, what do they want and what's the direction? Because Prop 36 being voted on in every single county says that the people of California want safety, but this legislative body does not. It does not prioritize it. And you're 100% right too. Their position hasn't changed on a lot of these bills. The polls have changed. And so what that means is their message has changed. And that's not good enough for Californians.
Exactly. And I just want to really underscore that point. I mean, what they did with that tactic, I think it's the most sick, disgusting, cynical political stunt I think I've ever seen. So let's just really make sure everyone understands what happened. There was a bill that had language in it that would make purchasing 16 to 17-year-olds a felony. It was a Democrat bill. As you say, all the Republicans were in favor of it. The Democrats took out the language about a felony and replaced it with bland, meaningless language about, oh, sometime in the future we intend to do something. And you Republicans voted against that because, of course, it's not action. And then the Democrats took that vote by you and turned it into Republicans like David Tangipa are blocking attempts to protect children. It's a kind of evil, honestly. I couldn't believe it when I saw that.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. So that is what happened. They removed the language of an automatic felony for 16 and 17-year-olds in the solicitation of a minor. Then they reintroduced language that we intend to do it. And that was a forced amendment. That is what we voted on the floor was, no, it is not good enough for us to intend to do something. We demand that we do something, and we demanded that we go back to the original bill with the original author. That is what we wanted. And they just didn't accept it, and that's what we voted against. That bill still is going to come to the assembly floor, that I hope a lot of people are paying attention, and how it's not over yet, because again, it still has to go to the Senate and make its way through the Senate, and we will see exactly if the leadership in this state is listening to the people of California, or if they're still going to be on their individual ideologies of this criminal first agenda.
It's amazing. Well, listen, Thank you so much for fighting for us. We love it. We love you. You're fantastic. And I really, really appreciate you being here to tell us the story today. And David, I'll see you very soon.
Hey, I always love to see you, Steve.
All right, that's our show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Great conversations. Very moving, that conversation with David, I have to say. He's such a great guy. A really, really big star for the future of our state. I don't know where we're going to be next week when we tape next week's episode of the Steve Hilton Show. We will be on the road fighting to save California. Hope you can join us then. Make sure you follow us, of course, on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And please join our campaign. Go to stevehiltonforgovernor.com. Sign up to be a volunteer, get involved. We really want to create that grassroots army. And of course, if you can spare some money to help us build that army, that is always very welcome too. See you next week.